one. Let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Arts of Data Science happy hour number 92. And if you're listening on the podcast and you hear this crisp, smooth voice, no more AirPods voice, that's because I'm back. I'm back in my studio. I'm so excited to be back here. 6 months, man. It's been over 6 months since the basement got flooded, but I'm back. Just a few more finishing touches and this room will be complete. But I'm excited to be here. Shout out to everybody that's joining us in the room. Vin, what's going on? Jennifer, good to see you again. Jennifer, Mikiko, what's going on? Auntie, Jacob, Russell, Rashad, Christian, how y'all doing, man? Good to have you guys here. Good to see a lot of old faces, man. It's been a while since I've seen you, Jennifer. Good to have you back. So I just completed like a full on first week. Well, last week I started at Desi, but I started like in the middle of the week on a Wednesday. But this was my first full week. And part of what I did for this week, at the very beginning of this week, was to come up with like a 90-day plan for myself, a 90-day plan to kind of set myself up for success, kind of doing the work before actually doing the work, right? Planning out how I want things to go. And I think that's a good topic to kind of kick off this happy hour with. How do you onboard successfully for a new job? What are the steps that you should take to onboard successfully? And let's pivot this not towards like the entry level type of roles. Let's talk more about in leadership type of roles. That's kind of want to hear your thoughts on. Let's go to Rashad, and then after Rashad, we'll hear from Vin, and then maybe Russell, and then Jennifer. Whoever else wants to go, please let me know. Just use the hand raise icon. I'll call on you. If you're watching on LinkedIn, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're here in the room and you have a question, do let me know. I will be sure to add your question to the queue. That being said, go for it, Rashad.
Yeah, no problem. Firstly, nice to be back. It's been a while since I've been on here, but starting off with an intense question as always. Well, I can say my last job. I joined. It was a startup type environment, and there was someone, and so there was like 10 of us, and there was someone above us who had an idea of what should be done, and they basically immediately assigned me a thing to do, and I was sort of skeptical that it was the best thing to do, right? So what I did essentially was I said, well, hold on, because firstly, when you join and someone gives you an immediate task, you're like, oh, I should do it to impress them, but then you also want to make sure that you're not just spinning your wheels and doing random work. And so I essentially pushed back a little bit. I said, I'm not sure if this is necessarily the best way to approach it. We ended up approaching it in a different way. And then 2 weeks later, that guy was fired because apparently he didn't do much. And I was like, where have I entered? What kind of environment have I joined? So that was my first time joining as in a senior level capacity. In my current job, it was a lot less ruckus, even though it was still early stage. I essentially joined and I started talking to people to understand their different challenges, sort of the landscape. And so I think some of those early meetings with people, so they at least know who you are very important. And then when you do that, to ask really good questions. So I think asking good questions rather than coming in like a bulldozer and being like, I know your solutions, I know the answer to everything. That's probably pretty important. Oftentimes there's sort of entrenched organizational perspectives, and you want to get a sense of those different perspectives, sort of like the main axes of conflict relatively quickly. That's probably a mistake I've made every time. And looking back, I would do that a little differently so that I could better understand, okay, what strategy should I come up with to operate in this environment? Because you could do things, it's a little different than just, here's your ticket, now go do work. If you don't understand the pros and cons, what'll happen is you'll do something, and then people will be like, oh, that's not really what I want, or you'll encounter resistance, and you'll wonder, where did that come from? I have no clue. So trying to understand in the beginning where those conflicts are, like this group thinks this and that group thinks that, that's probably the most important thing I would tell my younger self. And you do that through conversations with senior level people and people on the ground floor doing the hands-on work, and asking good questions to understand those sources of conflict and what they care about.
Thank you very much, Rashad. Appreciate that. Let's hear from Vin, and then after Vin, let's hear from Jennifer, then Mikiko, and whoever else wants to chime in. Please do let me know. I'll add you to the queue. Go for it, Vin.
So you're talking about from a leadership perspective?
Yeah. Let's say you've just started a role, and maybe you're at the manager or above level, where you don't necessarily have like tasks really maybe handed down to you, but you kind of have to pave your own way.
It's interesting, depending upon what level you're in, onboarding, like the business onboards you at, I'd say, the junior VP level and below, and you onboard the business at the VP and senior level. Like you get hired because you've submitted a vision or a 100-day plan or something where the company says you're the best person to take us through whatever it is that we're going through right now. And so from an organizational standpoint, or even sometimes like at the C-suite standpoint, you're brought in and you onboard the business. Even though you get the lay of the land and you definitely get to know people, you've done your research up front, and then you take the job because you know what's going on and you know what needs to happen. And it's very interesting that at a lower level, you can't come in, guns blazing, here's what we're going to do. But at a higher level, at some point, you are expected to come in and say, okay, I understand the problems that we're having, and here are my vision. Here are, the purpose of why we're going to do these things. Here are the changes that I'm going to help you make. Here's and then you begin to work with other organizations, work with other people. So I think that's at some point in your career, you're going to be brought in because you have experience fixing, or you have experience with growth. Like CEOs will sometimes be brought in to take a business from a certain revenue point to a certain revenue point, or to grow into a certain segment. You'll have people brought in to take over a data science organization who will take it from one size to the next size, or who can help it learn how to deliver certain projects and certain product lines. And so that's really, even at the lower level, when you're going to have to be onboarded by the business, always understand and do the same type of research that you would if you're coming in as the chief data and analytics officer or chief data scientist, and figure out why you're being brought in. Why you for this team? What is it that this team is transitioning from and to that you have specific experience with? That's going to not only help you land the job, but also during that onboarding time, you're going to be way more successful because you're going to be asking the right questions, building the right relationships, because it's easy to know, okay, that's my boss, that's my team, or those are the leaders under me, and these are their teams. The org chart stuff's simple. It's who else do I have to network with that the last person in this job didn't? Why did they leave? What did they fail at? Why did they get fired? Or did they get promoted? Okay, what kind of mess did they leave for me? It really is all about what change am I leading at any level of leadership, really. Management, I'd say the lowest expectation of change, but in data teams, sometimes a manager reports to the CTO. So you could be the person. And that's really what to think about is, are you coming in to onboard the business? Is the business onboarding you? And what changes are you expected to lead? And how are you going to do that? I mean, what's your plan? What's your 90-day plan? Because in a leadership role, it's not so much them giving you, it's really you giving them. This is my 90-day plan. This is what we're going to do. Talking to your next level leadership, whether that's a VP or C level, and saying, okay, so this is my plan. What do you think? What am I too assertive on? Who am I going to run into? What kind of politics am I about to walk through? And, it's really before you start doing, instead of saying, okay, and we're going to do all of it. It's really, here's my plan. What do you think? And getting other people's opinions and buy-in. They're going to tell you the culture. They're going to tell you who's going to hate it and who's going to love it. They're going to tell you who thought they should have your job. That happens a lot where, there's two people that thought they were having your job and then you showed up. Who are those? Sometimes it's even, who do you have to fire, or who do you have to bring in the first 30 days in order to set yourself up for success? A plan's critical.
Vin, thank you very much. Yeah, I've been I spent, a couple days this week just doing the 30-day plan, and I dedicated the first like real 2 weeks just to learning the business. Just going like, for developer relations, I got to understand not only the product that we have, but also the people using the product, our competitors, what the market's like, where are we in the market, what's our messaging, what's our positioning like. And I just been taking that time just to learn and absorb. And it's something I didn't do in my last role. Last role, I just kind of, they put me into something and I was like, do all these things. And it was really just that disconnect that I don't think helped set me up for success there. But I'd love to hear some more thoughts. Let's go to Jennifer Mikiko. If you are around, I'd love to hear from you as well. Go for it, Jennifer. Good to see you again, by the way.
Good to see you guys. Really, Vin and Richard covered so much of what I had written down. Out of the chute, hit the one-on-ones, meet with everyone, talk to everyone, know where you're going, but in sort of a listening, what do you think about things mode? Because the politics are the hardest thing to navigate and to elegantly elicit from others. And then deliver.
I like that. Elegantly illicit. Let's go to Mikiko and then Russell.
Sorry, I'm hot mess eating Friday. Woo, TJF. Yeah, I'm just gonna echo along with like Vin's point. Like when a leader comes in and they're kind of loosey-goosey and they're like, yeah, we don't really know what we're doing. We don't know what we really want. That's when the ICs and the directors are like, go on LinkedIn, go find some recruiters, because there's like a difference between, sorry, I also have smooth jazz in the background. It's okay. Hot mess Friday. It's a new thing, right? But there's a difference between knowing the vision versus like the tactics, right? Like tactics should not be done necessarily the first 2 weeks. Like you should not be doing that work, but you should have a vision and outcome. And more importantly, like building up the relationships and understanding what's on the ground. Because like a lot of times too, like for example, you'll see like really senior people are being brought in because they're friends with like the ELT, right? So they're being told something else. We can pretend cronyism doesn't happen, but it does. But also too, like if you worked really effectively with someone in the past on a high stakes project, you're going to want to work with those same people and not take a risk on a nobody, right? But they have like a certain directive versus like what they will hear the first couple days, like, working with the other directors and all that. So I would say like a leader that doesn't come in with a vision or what they want to get out of it or an understanding, that's like a big red flag. But there is like that sort of bridge between like, I have a vision. At the same time, I am willing to work with people here on figuring out how exactly to execute that successfully, versus I have a vision and I'm going to do what I want. And that's like the biggest way to kind of not get buy-in very early on. For people who are more like on the technical leadership staff, it's going to be a little bit different. The advice I think is still don't do work the first 2 weeks. But also for a lot of the technical leadership people, shut up and listen. Like, honestly, that would be the best onboarding. And also like assume good intent. It's a really, really big one, right? Like at the end of the day, we all have issues with like legacy software. The people who operate legacy software hate it. No one loves it, but it was there. It got the company to a purpose, right? So I think that's like, those are really kind of the common things. It's like, shut up and listen, have a vision, be willing to work with people. And then honestly, they'll kind of just tell you their problems. It's really great.
Thank you very much, Mikiko. Let's go to Russell.
Thanks, Aubrey. So I'd split it up into kind of different increments. Firstly, I'd split out tactical from strategic. And by tactical, I mean the things that directly relate to you as an employee for the company. Even if you're senior, there's going to be some prerequisites that need to be done. Sort out how your salary is going to be paid to which bank account, learn the systems for booking absences and all that type of stuff. And Even if you're going to have an assistant that's going to help with some of that stuff, make sure that that relationship is fully understood, because once you start to get into the business, you'll never have more time than you will have at the start to get all of that stuff buttoned down. Then move on to the strategic stuff that's more to do with the relationship of the business, and start with a soft onboarding. So maybe take the first 30 days of those 90 days to go and introduce yourself to everyone in the business, tell them you're having a soft start, you've just joined the business, you're not actively tackling any problems at the moment, you're just understanding the business, and let them know it's a perfect time for them to give you their breakdown of their opinion of the business, and try and absorb as much knowledge as you can from everyone in that 30 days. But then perhaps also say, whilst it's a soft onboarding, if there are any critical things that do crop up, let you know as soon as possible. It's not that you're refusing to do things, but you're taking the time to have this soft onboarding, and then start to ramp up from day 30 through to day 90 to pick up the important things. But absolutely, as Vin and Jennifer has mentioned, and Mikiko also, absorb as much knowledge from the experience of the business as you possibly can. And once you get that from everybody, you should be able to tell if you get enough information from all of them. If there are areas of the business where there's more resistance to some certain things, perhaps if you have some problem staff, etc., you might not need other people to tell you that. But look at everything broad spectrum as a complete entity from all of the feedback you get from the business, and then build your strategic way forward for day 30, day 90 and onwards.
Russell, thank you very much. Let me know if you guys have any questions, either on LinkedIn or on YouTube. Happy to take your questions, or right here in the chat. Happy to take your questions as well. Got a question here on LinkedIn from Sangeeta. I'll try to make the question as general as possible, but she's saying sometimes she gets bogged down with so many resources. She really enjoys solving NLP problems, also enjoys doing developer advocacy. And she's saying, where would it take on developer advocacy? I'm not sure I understand the question, but the second half of the question sounds very clear. What's your input towards really enjoying learning new technologies without extra pressure? Let's just go ahead and make that last part the actual question that we'll talk about right now. How do you learn new technologies? How do you make the practice of learning new technologies enjoyable? That's a good question, man. I mean, there's so many tools out there in data science, machine learning, so many tools. I think the part you're saying here, getting bogged down with so many resources, so many tools, don't believe everything you read on a job description, all those like technologies and tools. Like, you don't have to learn all of them. So I think that's step one towards getting a sense of enjoyment, is just don't feel like you have to learn everything. And then once you do, narrow down a list of things that look actually interesting to you, just go through the hello world and just be curious, be open-minded. Don't get, frustrated. Hopefully some of these products have a smooth developer experience, and it makes that process enjoyable. But that'd be my advice. I'll just stop there. Just don't think that you have to learn how to do everything all at once. Let's go to Rashad for this, because Rashad knows all about finding joy. So go for it.
Yeah, sure. I know exactly how you feel. Well, I think I do, because I only hear this question over text, but it's a very common thing in a lot of people, including in myself. And I remember before I got my first data science job, I really wanted to work in music, Spotify or something. So I wanted to learn audio, machine learning, but it was just a little advanced for me as a beginner. And I made it stressful, and I was trying to do a side project because I heard, you should have a side project to prove your excellence, right? But the things I had to learn to do it were, I set myself such a high scope, and the perfectionism of not wanting to show something, put something on the internet that was not perfect, kept me from doing very much. So I kept learning. I never did anything with it, very little. And it was very stressful, and I would recommend doing the opposite of what I did back then. So now looking at tech I've enjoyed learning, tech I've not enjoyed learning, the main thing for me was that I start with a problem in mind. So you could start from just, what's interesting, and go learn that. for example. You could also look at a job description, see the enormous list, like Harpreet said, and you could feel overwhelmed, or you could just pick one of the things and start. I think you could be a little more strategic with it. There's a couple of heuristics you could use. For example, you find 5 jobs that you think sound really cool. Perhaps it's a specific industry, a specific kind of data you're working with, or something that draws you to those specific things, and you have a pretty good reason why. I would find the overlapping skills and probably start there. If I were starting from scratch, there's just sort of like the skills you need to get in the door. And then I would probably, after that, pick one skill that might make you stand out. Maybe something they list under the nice to have. Usually some sort of knowledge of the industry itself will make you stand out. Just because you have the same machine learning techniques, but so many different industries that the closer you can get to the industry listed in a description or a set of descriptions, the more you'll stand out. And that's a very efficient, I think, use of your time. With having a problem in mind thing, I would say having a specific side project or goal, making it very concrete. I want to work backwards, kind of like Amazon does when they think about launching a product. They'll start with writing a fake letter from the customer that's really happy with this product, and then they work backwards from that to, okay, what should we do about it? I would work backwards and then figure out what skills you need to deliver a thing. And that makes it a lot more enjoyable, because instead of procrastinating like I did, you'll end up learning something that's very specific and applied. You'll apply it and you'll feel good about yourself that you used your knowledge. You won't feel fake. Do I actually understand this? Do I know this? No, you did. You used it, right? So I would suggest working backwards from some sort of deliverable, even if it's something you make up yourself. And then also be strategic about what that is by finding overlapping jobs you like, and then focusing on the most common skill first.
Rashad, thank you so much. Sangeeta, hopefully that answered your question. We'll do a quick count to 3 to see if anybody else has something to add on to this. 3, 2, 1. No. So let's go ahead and go do Jacob's question. By the way, if you're watching on LinkedIn or on YouTube and you got questions, do let me know right there in the chat. Jacob, go for it.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
So mine is pertaining to the first question you asked. So I've been working as a data analyst for close to 18 months now, and I happen to manage the data team. So the business is taking a new turn, and I'm told to be more strategic and be more initiative. So I would say I've never had a manager, to work under, say, for 6 months. I think that's the longest time I've worked under somebody. So it's a bit dreadful, because I'm more of a technical person, not a business-minded person. So that's going to be my challenge. So how do I move from being technical to being a business-minded person, trying to help them scale up a business?
Yeah, I think this one is a perfect question for Vin, because Vin has a course on essentially strategy for technical thinkers or data scientists. So let's go to Vin. Also, by the way, shout out to the new folks that joined. Kathy, good to see you. Navi and Vivian, good to see y'all. If you guys got questions or comments, you know what to do. Vin, go for it.
Yeah, I think first, always make sure what they mean by strategic. A lot of times your manager will throw that word out because somebody told your manager, we need to be more strategic about how we use data. We need to be more strategic about how we use AI. And so they went and literally took the piece of paper and handed it to you. So that's the first thing, is get some context. Think about how you're going to phrase that question, because you can't really come back and say, okay, define strategy. But just ask, what's the objective? That's a good way of phrasing it. What would change as far as my deliverables, the outcomes? Are you just looking for me to give you some more value? And then realize that at the very beginning, strategy is just another word for value. So if you look at, how does the business create value? Why does it create it that way? How does the business get money from customers? Why does it do it that way? You're going to figure out pretty quickly that strategy is a lot of that type of call and response. You know, some question about value and then why. Some question about value and then why. And you're going to eventually get to the point where you do that with your projects, where you say, okay, we're going to do this. It's going to produce this value. Now, why are we doing it? And eventually you'll reverse it. When you go from thinking tactically to thinking strategically, you'll start saying, okay, why are we doing data? Why are we doing data science? Why are we doing analytics? Where does it fit in the business? Where does the business need it to fit? Why does this support core strategy? Why does this support goals? Will this lead to, and this is something that the CEO of Disney said, you know, they were very focused on shareholder value and creating value for shareholders. And will this, you know, result in shareholder value? And once you get to that point where you go, how does this project make cash for the business or return value to shareholders, investors, depending upon whether you're public, private, startup, it'll be a different intended audience. But at the end of the day, it's really, there's a business impact that the person that owns the business will tangibly feel. They'll be happy about it. They might take you to dinner for it if they find out that you were part of it. And that's where you want to start aiming. And that's really strategy at the very beginning, is that concept of value. Why are we doing that? And then reversing the concept of, instead of we could do this, so we could make money, so we will, beginning with why, and then moving forward to saying, okay, understand the goals, understand why. Now let's figure out what we should be doing. And then you're thinking strategically all of a sudden. That's business acumen in 3 minutes.
One of the things I could find hard is like knowing not only who to ask why, but like how to ask why without I don't know, feeling stupid, without because if I go with somebody and say, hey, why do we want to do data? I'm just gonna think their immediate response is gonna be, well, that's why we hired you, to go figure out why we need data. I guess, how do you kind of navigate those?
Yeah, I gotta jump in. Okay, whatever you do, don't ask your CEO why, because they will kill you. This is like, that's the end of your career right there. If you go to your CEO and go, why are we selling these products? Because it's either one, they're worried that you don't know, or two, they don't know and they're scared that you're asking them. There's no way to win that question. So and when I say ask why, it's really, you're asking yourself this, and you're usually in the best position in the business to understand the answer and to quantify the answer. And in many cases, you'll realize, okay, we shouldn't be doing this. There's actually a better opportunity. There's a better option. And that's where you as a data scientist can add a lot of value to the business. It's just really helping the business understand itself and give them some tools to do things better. But yeah, when I said why, I didn't mean outside with the outside voice. I'm sorry. I should have said that.
Thank you very much, Vin. Let's hear from Rashad and then Mikiko. Some good comments from Mikiko. Mikiko says, it's almost like asking, why did you think that was a good outfit to wear? Never a good answer to that. I like that, Mikiko. Let's go to Rashad, and then let's hear from Mikiko after that. And by the way, if anybody else wants to jump in on this and provide some insight, please do feel free to do that. And Jacob, let me know if you need any further clarification at all too. Rashad, go for it.
Yeah, Ben's answer was great. I'll just say, if you're confused where to start with that, I mean, revenue and cost is a good place to start. Now, if you're already hired, I would assume you would know about that to some extent already. But if you're working with someone new, you could start like all the management consulting interviews. All right, well, what are the biggest drivers of revenue and what are the biggest drivers of cost? And okay, why do you focus there and not this other thing? And you just that's like sort of the why train. Then you can get there, but basically they give you an answer and then you say, okay, well, what does that do? And what are you not doing, right? Because a lot of strategies, what you're not doing. Well, we're going to focus on high-end hotels. We're not going to focus on economy hotels. Why? Well, we have a manager where we are history, we understand them better, we understand how they work, and we think we can get X% more margin, and We have access to these locations and stuff like, there's all sorts of reasons why. It could be the talent, it could be the technology, it could be their processes or legacy or who they acquired. And there's all sorts of reasons why they do one thing or the other. But if you just keep asking, then you'll start to, when you get each answer, maybe one thing you could do is to brainstorm, okay, well, given that, I wonder how data science could help with that. Okay, if that's driving revenue, then maybe we could do projects related to this, and this, and you start to come up with ideas. And I guess that's one heuristic to think strategic, thinking bigger picture. Just work backwards from the biggest things that people care about, rather than forwards from where you are now. I'd say that just being like, okay, here's a random idea, that's like the opposite of being strategic. It's really working backwards from goals and understanding constraints. And the constraints of most businesses are revenues and costs. So it's a good default.
Rashad, thank you so much. Navi, let's hear from you.
Sorry. So I think when that question actually comes up a lot in the work I do, and usually that's another form of saying, hey, the reports that you are doing, I don't know what to do with them. At least that's like, in my world, that's kind of the lingo for, hey, what do I do with all these reports that are coming to me? So sometimes it's a question that, somebody a little bit higher up is thinking, and it's valid, that I'm getting all these reports, I just don't know. What does that mean for me? So sometimes it's kind of a nice place for you to step back and say, hey, let me just kind of get an inventory list of what's going on and what is, the value of that. And it's a valid question. If they're saying, let's be strategic, that means, hey, if I'm sending out 20 reports and they're only using 3 of them, maybe I don't need 20 reports, So it's one of the exercises that I'm currently doing. Where I'm working with like a bunch of clients spread across different countries. And there's just a ton of reporting. And right now I'm just kind of staring at it at this point to see, like, what does that even mean? So I think it's a valid question. Sometimes we just kind of need to pause and think about, where am I going with this? So, take your time to think about it.
Thank you, Navi. Vin says in the comments here, keep asking questions until you find one they cannot answer, then provide data that helps answer it. I like that. Mikiko, let's hear from you.
Sorry, now it went to the wrong camera. This live streaming thing's not going to go well next week. Harpreet, there you are. Okay. I just wanted to recommend some books because I feel like when I was learning I feel like a lot of times what was hard for me becoming like an IC that interfaced a lot with like business partners or key stakeholders like on the business side was not understanding like the business model. So I always love asking the question to my business partners, hey, what books are you reading? That like help you with your job and that help inform your work. Especially when I was dealing with like sales and customer success and marketing. So this is honestly one of my all-time favorite books of all time. And I can't believe you guys can see my background. Everything is wrong today. I had a Zoom background, but this one's my favorite book, Lean Analytics. It's like within the Lean Startup series, but it literally talks about all the key metrics like within the different major business models, which I really like. It's very like surface level. So, it's not going to go deep into like financial metrics, but I really love it. And you can see it's been really well loved and used and highlighted. And then the other 2 books that they're kind of the same, to be honest, but they're, it's not bad to pick up, is A Guide to Analyzing Companies from HBR. It's like a mini MBA book, but a little bit better written. And then this one's Guide to Financial Management. So it's more like the finance principles of like companies. So those are really great. And I think anytime I went into like a new field, like I really try to familiarize myself with like what my partners were thinking of in terms of metrics and the problems they were trying to solve. So whether it was like supply chain, S&OP planning, sales management, real estate, finance, all that, I feel like that helped me a lot. So those are just some book recommendations if people are interested. Yeah, in terms of at least building the intuition of the business model and like the metrics and things like that.
Thank you very much, Mikiko. And by the way, I interviewed one of the authors of Lean Analytics, Alistair Kroll, way back in the day. So definitely check that episode out. Alistair Kroll on the Arts of Data Science podcast. Another book I'd recommend is How to Measure Anything. That's a really, really good book by Douglas Hubbard, who is actually on my podcast as well. Got an episode with him where we just talk about literally how to measure these unmeasurable things. Really good book. Lot of math and stats in that book. If you're into that, highly recommend it. So don't see any other questions. You know, Mikiko, you flashed a lot of books up there, like they just books after books after books, and I'm wondering, like, you know, speaking about reading books, like how do you handle all that information? Like that's one thing I've been really trying to deal with, or trying to find a system to put in place over the last couple of months is just changing my relationship to information, because there's a ton of information out there. And, you know, I don't know how many times I see something, I'm like, oh, damn, that looks like an awesome article. Let me open a tab and read it later. Or damn, I'm going to, you know, put this in my saved bookmarks on Medium and come back and read it later. And none of those tabs ever get read. I end up with like 100 tabs open of things that I intend to read. I have dozens upon dozens of, you know, bookmark articles on Medium that I never get to read. And I'm just wondering, how do you handle this just barrage? I don't know if barrage is the right word, deluge of information. Let's hear from Mikiko, and then after that, if anybody else has some tips, do let me know. And if anyone's interested, I can kind of share my system and what I've been doing recently. Go for Mikiko.
Yeah, it kind of harkens back to like our mentoring days together, right? Where I would just go like, oh, this book are great. Yeah, I mean, like even right now, like my reading, I guess productivity level has not been great, mainly because I'm spending so much time reading like really super technical, like O'Reilly books, or honestly nonsense politicking on Slack. So that takes emotional energy that honestly leaves me drained of reading. But I think part of it is also knowing what information you need to have at the time. And I think that goes back to that earlier question of like, how do you feel good about learning? Like I used to get all very sort of obsessive about creating a learning plan for myself. And that honestly stressed me out, because it was almost like when you frame up all the things you don't know in a way that's very consumable, it gets very easy to see how little you kind of know, I guess, and can kind of consume. So I kind of feel like it's super important. Like you need like a portfolio of learning, right? I would say like, you know, let's say for example, 20 to 30 or 40% of your portfolio, if you're like in a working IC, for example, should maybe be new stuff. Like another 30% should be like really firming down like foundations. It's almost like you're doing maintenance or operational work where you're filling the gaps. And the other 30 or 40% or however remaining is left should be like things that are immediately relevant like to one's job. And that's how I kind of view it. And it's like, I try not to, I don't know, like it's one of those things that I don't necessarily love about social media is I do feel like a lot of influencers, they paint an incredibly rosy picture of their lives. Like I'm able to accomplish all like 10, 20x things. And it's like, but they're doing it full time. Like if I had a full time, like for example, Alex the Analyst, right? He had that video with Kenji where he's like, I get 1 hour to YouTube. He's also got like 300,000 subscribers. He occasionally does courses and all that, but he's got 3 kids, 2 dogs, 2 cats, and I think a whole lot of other animals. And his wife, you know, stays at home and takes care of the kids, right? So he's only got so much time, and he's just kind of accepted that like there's just certain things he's just not going to get to. So it's kind of the same thing with like the earlier question of like, how do you keep learning fun? It's like, realize that you're going to be imperfect. You're not going to be the smartest kid in the block. Honestly, there's a 15-year-old right around the corner that's just probably going to kick everyone's butt anyway. So let's just kind of keep improving from where we are. And the other aspect too is like visual learning. Like I'm starting to take all my notes, draw them out and all that. I try to get to it when I can, but it is what it is, right? So that's, I think, just more the advice, because I haven't, for example, these guys I haven't revisited in years, but I remember them. I tried to really learn it deeply at that time, and I can refer back to it, but I haven't like actually opened these up in like 5 years since leaving the business side of the house. So yeah, I don't, honestly, Harpreet, I'm amazed at your like reading like productivity. I'm like, for me, it's like if I can get through like, let's say 50, 60 pages a week of like technical stuff, I feel like that's a win. But yeah, it's definitely not whole books like a month anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I'll talk about my system a little bit if we got like time, whatever. But if anybody wants to share theirs, I'd love to hear how you do it. Rashad, let's hear from you. And then looks like Vin has a question. So after Rashad, I'll kind of show what my system is, and we'll get into Vin's question. And if anybody has tips on how they manage their relationship with information, let us know, whether you're in the chat or if you want to unmute and talk to us here.
There's so I think of learning as you can break it in two sections, I guess. There's the system side, sort of how you organize it, and then there's the enjoyment side. And you want to make sure that you enjoy the systems that you set up. I think a lot of times people who are very ambitious to learn will try to set up systems that they pulled from other people. I'm going to do this and read 60 books a year or something like that. And then they end up not really liking it. And, partly it's maybe you're forcing yourself into a mold, learning in a way that you don't actually enjoy. So I've also gone through this journey over time. And I think for me, part of the learning has to be structured and goal oriented. And that's like a lot of what you do at work. For example, I'm reading papers now about reconciling grouped and hierarchical time series right now, like different methods and updates, getting latest up to date on that. So it's a requirement for our project. That's very goal oriented. And it's fun because, well, essentially you skim a bunch of papers and then you say, okay, I think this one is the most relevant because of XYZ caveats. And then okay, is there an implementation? Can I implement it? Like that. So there's some sort of action bias. But if I were to only do structured goal directed learning, I would hate it. I would procrastinate on it. I know this because I have. And so I realized I need some unstructured learning too. And that has to be a lot broader. Often it has to be serendipitous. That's part of the reason I enjoy being on LinkedIn, posting on LinkedIn, following a wide variety of people, because sometimes I'll read something, I'll see something and think, oh, I never thought of it that way, or I never even thought that this was a thing. It's sort of like there's this vast world of unknown unknowns, things you don't even know you don't know. And it's really fun for me personally to encounter that and make it a known unknown, and then think, okay, do I want to learn something about that more? So there's that joy of discovery in addition to the goal stuff. So I'd say make sure you probably need some room for both. So make sure that your system, whatever you use, incorporates that emotional aspect. And you can always audit, is my learning system good? One simple thing I've been doing lately with my goals is just rating 1 to 10 how I feel about a system I use, like say a system to get into the flow state, a system for learning or whatever. And if it's not 10, which it isn't, I'll think, okay, what's one idea I could use to improve it? And you can iterate over time to improve that system. And I found that doing that, it compounds, actually. You end up with a system that you quite enjoy. I enjoy mine currently. It could probably have better structures, and that's the advice that you guys are giving. But I'd say make sure you also focus on the enjoyment side. What's optimal for others may not be optimal for you.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that point about what's optimal for others. Like I'm a self-help junkie, dude. I'm consistently just trying to be better, because I've spent so much time not being that great. I'm trying to be better. So I'm always looking for ways to improve myself. And part of that just means being curious about a number of different things. So the way I've started is just picking a few areas in life that I just want to focus on, right? And then ignoring everything else until I'm bored with those areas in life. So for me, like, those areas that I focus on are, developer relations, and within developer relations is how do I create a good strategy? How do I build community? How do I, create good content? How do I become a better marketer to developers? The next area for me is philosophy, and then deep learning, specifically computer vision. That's a huge part of our product offering. That's something I've got to get good at is computer vision. And then, I listen to a bunch of podcasts. How do I learn from those podcasts? How do I take what I've learned and put it into action? And then also, personal growth. So what I've done is, taking bits of this system, building a second brain. I'm just going to share something on my screen real quick, if you guys don't mind. Share my entire desktop here. So I use something called Obsidian. I use this as my second brain. So it's a personal knowledge management thing. And essentially how I have my life split up is, I follow this method called PARA, P-A-R-A. So, what active projects am I working on? What are the areas in life that I'm, focusing on at the moment? And then everything else that's not related to the areas in life or just, other stuff I put into resources. And then archive is just stuff that's I've moved on from. And it starts by first figuring out what these areas are that I care most about in life at the moment. And then capturing just whatever I capture that I'm reading, just making sure that I at least put 30 to 45 seconds of due diligence before I add it to my queue. And when I add it to my queue, I use something called Matter. So you'll see here, I've got subscription, I've got Vin's newsletter sent here. All my subscriptions for newsletters come here. And I'm bad at keeping up on newsletters, but I've got like a reading queue as well. And then here's all the stuff that I'm currently coming across that relate to those areas that I'm most focused on. And then what I'll do is I'll just like highlight stuff from that. And when I highlight stuff, it goes automatically, it syncs into my second brain into, this inbox, and I'll have, highlights. I'm obviously a poker player. That's one area in life that is never going to change, but capturing notes, then distilling it down. So for example, here is an example of me coming up with my 90-day plan. Like here, I took a bunch of notes and distilled down the notes with some takeaways, and then built my own kind of 90-day plan from that. So just coming up with a system that works, that has been quite helpful. But I will stop there. Let's go ahead and get into to Vin's question.
It's kind of simple, but I think it's maybe a complicated answers. Is anybody afraid of getting laid off right now? And, if it's a yay or an A, why? If you're not afraid of it, what's giving you the confidence that your job's good, safe, stable? And if you are worried about it, what is it, what's the thing that's concerning you most? Obviously, if you can talk about it, I don't mean to get into internal company politics, but, what is it just broadly that's got you worried?
I swear, like I'm in a constant state of wondering if I'm going to get fired. not because of like I'm not doing a good job. It's just that's just how I am. Like the moment I get a job offer, I'm just like, oh shit, they're probably going to lay me off or something. So I mean, all jokes aside, I currently I'm not really afraid of getting laid off in this current role, just because I feel like I've developed a unique skill set. Right, not only am I technically proficient, I've also got selling skills to a certain extent, like, non-technical hard skills. Like I'm pretty decent at marketing. I'm kind of learning that a lot, and I'm kind of decent at writing. So, I can both build and sell. And I feel like the combination of those two skills are, kind of hard to replace. But I'm wondering as well, like, if anybody wants to chime in, let me know. Let's go to Mikiko. Shout out to Joe Reese. Joe Reese is in the building. Good to see you, Joe Reese. Also, Alexis has joined us. Good to see you as well.
So my big concern is just how ridiculous sometimes the engineering interviews are. That's legitimately kind of the only thing. But even then, it's like, as long as I steer clear of the fangs, I'm actually pretty good. Like when I was struggling with the technical interviews, one of my mentors was just like, just don't do them. And I'm like, what do you mean? Just don't do them? Just say I'm not going to. They're like, yeah, just say you're not going to. And then the minute a recruiter says that there's a technical screen, just tell them no, and then just tell them why. I'm like, okay, like, let's see if I actually have a job. Ended up getting 3 job offers for, like senior-ish ML ops roles. Had another 2 or 3 like FANG interviews where I was like, I don't know if I really care to do it. All that jazz. I think like once you get beyond, like it really is. I think once you get to senior, it becomes so much easier than when you're entry level. And then even then it then becomes more of a like, do you want to sell your soul for potentially doing like micro work, or do you want kind of broader scope, but maybe a little bit less money? Or do you want to go into like management or what have you? Because it was interesting because Shopify had a huge layoff the week that Matt Sharp was hired. And I was like, are you okay, dude? And he's like, yeah, doing great. Data engineer, right? If they like lay us off, then, that's like real bad news for the company. So I think if you're on business partner teams, I feel like it's a little bit more concerning, or if you're just doing like work that could be easily automated by a Python script. But for everything else, especially if you deal with systems, I kind of feel like as long as people keep their skills up to date, it's okay. But some of the like engineering interviews are just really ridiculous what they ask for. That's like my only stress is I'm like, okay, what if just luck of the draw, it's all companies that only want to do tech screens? How do I serve? I don't know. Do I deal or whatever?
Rashad, let's hear from you. Rashad's reading Snow Leopard. That is on my wish list by the Category Pirates, one of which is what's his name? Nicholas Cole. Yeah, I love his stuff. But go for it.
So afraid of layoffs. Well, I'm not particularly afraid in our situation. So I'm part of the Blackstone family, and we're doing very well. They keep buying shit, to put it lightly, and the way they think about things is they call it high conviction, but it basically means that they've thought that in the long run that the outlook for the things they buy is very high. It's very good from evaluations and cash flow, depending on the type of investment. So whatever their conviction is, it seems to be working well for them. And our portfolio company, like we're growing, and we have so many data engineering openings in particular. There's just an enormous amount of data in all sorts of strange places that we need to wrangle, and then from the data science perspective, as long as we're aligned to either net new opportunities or essentially scaling what people already do, it's easy to make the case for ROI. And as long as the person has faith that you're not just blowing smoke, then I think that's like generically why I think that I'm not particularly worried. I would be most worried, probably you guys seen in startups or people that sort of did a growth at all cost and they haven't reached that tipping point where they become Uber and Lyft. Those are the people who have to worry the most because that sort of capital you guys have seen is drying up.
I'd be worried if I was in a company, if the company was, let's say, a developer product company, and most of the people on their staff were salespeople. I think that would be a scary situation to be in. That'd be one situation where I'd worry, because like this, that kind of goes back to what Rashad was saying about growth at all costs. That's kind of what those type of companies I think are in. But I guess what are your thoughts on that? Let's go to Vin. If you're at one of these growth at all cost companies, and first of all, how do you tell if you're in a growth at all cost company?
You've got to balance. There's the way that they're investing. Are they bringing people in at a loss, or are they focusing on monetizing the people that they already have? And that's going to be the thing that'll tell you which way that you're going. If they're investing in new ways to monetize the people that they have, the customers that they have, or subscriptions or whatever, that's where they've made the switch between growth at all costs to profitability. Whereas if they don't care if they're taking a loss on every acquisition, yeah, that's a growth at all costs.
All right. Any other questions or follow-ups? All right. So I don't know, man. Like I saw this article. Well, read the headline of it. I didn't read the entire article, but it was I think it was something along the lines that uh, Sundar Pichai and Mark Zuckerberg think that employees in tech spend too much time chilling and not enough time working. Have you guys seen this headline of this article? Anyone? No. I'd love to hear just thoughts or opinions to kind of riff off that. Are people in tech spending too much time chilling, not enough time working? Mikiko, go for it.
I mean, whose fault is it if that's the case, right? Like, I mean, realistically, like if you're, this is something I kind of struggle with because it's like on the one hand, we have a lot of people talking about leadership out in the world, but we don't have a lot of people like practicing it, like good leadership and management. And I'm constantly reminded by this, like whenever I hear stories of like, you know, everyone's heard stories, right? Like of their friends or family at companies. And I feel like there's a couple reasons why, like, for example, engineers might not be working. One is because they don't want to deal with like the business side. Sometimes the business side really needs to kind of really clarify like what their priorities are. I think a second thing though, and this is on the engineer's fault, is a lot of times like engineers or data scientists or whatnot, sometimes we're just really comfortable with just building stuff. And we're like, you know what, we just want to go build stuff. We don't want to pollute the purity of development by like adding dollars and money into the mix. And I kind of hear this from like some creative people. They're like, well, we don't want to pollute our art. It's like, well, at the same time, you like watching Mad Men, which is about advertising. So, you know, so things like that. But also too, like, I think at the end of the day, like, and Vin had an article about this too that I really loved. I think it was Monday. Basically, it was about like performance management on teams. I mean, you can do a way better job of summarizing, but it resonates to me because I was like, there's various points in time where in my career, I was definitely very underemployed and I was super bored, which means I was going to hop ship at any point, or I was really burned out. And you look at the rest of the team, it's like not everyone is either, everyone is also burned out, or you're just seeing like distinctly some people's workloads are a lot worse than others, and they're kind of not being given the mentorship to improve. So I'm kind of like, I don't know, Zuckerberg and Pinchar and all that. It's leadership comes from, you know, top down, and like, you know, empowerment comes from like bottom up, right? So you need to kind of lead and empower your teams to like go on and take on those new opportunities. Because I mean, for some people, they like to just check in, check out like a huge salary, and that's fine. They exist. It's cool, right? But there's probably a lot more people who wish they were genuinely, you know, engaged in their work, for whom like to put any effort into something is putting their heart and soul. And for those people, I think they are not always being well served by kind of the lackadaisical emphasis on like management, on like true management and like leadership. But anyway, I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I really love that blog post, Vin. It was great.
Vin, can you talk about that blog post real quick?
Yeah, a little bit of it was just talking about how you can help people at different stages in their career, because not everybody's a high performer. Not everybody who is a high performer will always be a high performer. And so part of the process of leadership is figuring out where people are and just helping them improve. In some cases, you're managing a low performer, and it's not about where they are right now. It's about what can I do to get them to a better place? How much can I improve this person in 1 year? What kind of plan can I put together to get this person to improve and to get this person out of whatever, you know, what's going on? I'm not going to ask you like personal questions, and I'm not going to try to address core issues of what's going on outside of life. But, you know, in my mind, I'm saying, okay, what could be going on with this human not with this resource, but with this human in front of me who is asking me, just by their poor performance, they're asking me to help. That's what it really is. If they're not performing as well as they used to, or as well as I know they could be, that's somebody saying, help me out. And so it's about building a plan, and will they follow it? Because if they're not following the plan to improve, that's when you have to say, okay, look, I've done the work of a leader. You haven't done the work of an employee. It's time, it's time for some tough choices here. And so that's what the way I take, look at low performers is this is a huge opportunity for me to improve the entire productivity of the team with just one person. This person going from low performer to just mid is such a huge difference that I should be spending my time here. But only if, we put a plan together, they agree with it, they agree to it, and then they give up on it. Okay, that's, if you're not working with it, yes, I'm going to work with you as long as you will. But just understanding everybody's at a different place. High performers need ways to improve too. I better give you an improvement plan. I better give you a career path quick or you're gone. I better find some interesting stuff for you to be doing or you're gone. And so that's another area where you have to, as a leader, put a lot of work into and create a performance. It's the same approach. I mean, leading a low performer and a high performer is exactly the same approach. I better put a plan in place, and you're agreeing to it for a completely different reason. It's because that's basically my retention strategy to make sure you don't go someplace, is I've got to put a plan in place. And the only way I keep you following me is if I can make you better. If I can figure out a way, if I can find resources, if I can put you in front of interesting projects, if I can get you more challenged, if I can give you access to stuff, whatever it is that's going to put you into the direction you want to go and make you better. And so, if I don't do that to the low performer, they're going to be on the team forever and they're never going to get any better. If I don't do it with the high performer, they're not going to be there much longer and they're never going to get better. So yeah, it's kind of two sides. And, to your original question about work, I cannot tell you, I spend a lot of time with CEOs. I can't tell you how much they hate you guys. I cannot even explain to you right now the level of I don't like that's going on at the C level. I cannot explain it to you. They hate y'all. And it's just, half of it's perception. Half of the time when I actually take somebody down and say, why don't you sit down and talk with these people? Half of it's perception. But the other half is there is a management mentality and there is a newer version of what it means to work. And the management mentality can't figure it out. It's happened so fast that the way every leader at the C level has been trained to run an organization is busted. And they're in chaos right now in some companies as far as what do they do with management. There are companies that are talking about getting rid of an entire middle layer of management because they don't need them. And that's got the C-suite saying, okay, who's next? Because they have boards who are basically saying, look, adapt or die. And a lot of the adapt is being driven by employees who they can't replace. They can't replace any of you at all. There's no way. There's not enough people. They can't lay you off, even though there are definitely companies that are going to and shoot themselves in the foot in the process. But they can't really, they don't have the bargaining power that they used to bring everyone back to the old management paradigm. And so I cannot even tell you how much stress is at that top level, just having to do with not only talent management, but just organizational structure and the future of management and leadership. The amount of money they're spending on seminars and training to try to understand the new workforce and the future of work and the new remote worker, understanding your millennials and all, just the dumbest things you've ever seen. Titles of seminars, and they're selling out. And it's because right now the C-suite can't handle you guys. They just 100%. They don't know what to do with this new type of organization. And there's this sort of bifurcation where you have people like Chapek, who's running Disney. He knows how to handle creatives. He knows how to handle advanced R&D. He knows how to work with and to get people to do that combination where they still fit into the old paradigm, but they're beginning to incorporate slowly the new paradigm of work, and they're retraining leadership, and they're bringing new people in and new ideas in, and they're killing it. And so there is this new sort of CEO that's emerging who's able to handle it and manage it better. And so that's even scaring the old school even worse. It's like, just, I wish I could be specific about some of the things I've heard, but things going to happen soon.
What is it about us? Is it just is it because, like, are we a threat? Do we uncover uglinesses in the business? Do we ask too many questions? Like, what is it about us? And by us, I'm assuming you mean like data professionals at large.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just everything. There's and Mikiko does this really well. She asks blunt questions and expects answers, whereas previous generations would ask blunt questions and then back down. And so that's the change. That is literally the shift in mindset, is that now, and that, it's kind of my generation and younger who are all doing kind of the same thing, and we're emboldening each other because one of us sees, oh, there's 5 people doing that. Yeah, I can do that too now. And all of a sudden it's an entire organization who is asking blunt questions and expecting answers. And now you have this data group who goes, yeah, I can get you an answer. What do you need? And all of a sudden it's coming together at the same time as you have this sort of business cultural movement happening too, where workers have more power than they really have at any time since the 80s, because there's just not enough of, any sort of technical talent. And there's a lot of technical talent that's just leaving technology because they're tired of it. That's the other piece of this that's happening, is you have people who are leaving technology and going into either retirement early. Like a lot of people my age are talking retirement. I'm thinking, wow, okay, that's a huge shift. And you also have obviously the older generations than mine who are like, how do I get out? Who are taking their massive stock and going, we can sell this. I'm at the top. I'm good. I'm out. And so there is a huge shortage. It's not going anywhere. There's no interest in the high school ranks. And I figured this out over the last year. None of them want to go into technology. There's just such a small percentage of people in high school who, want to go into technology, period, let alone data science. And so all of those dynamics are happening at the same time. And that's what leadership hates, is we've created uncertainty, we've created rapid change, and we have bargaining power. And so there isn't a power dynamic that can be exploited to slow the change down. And that's what they hate, is we are creating a level of uncertainty in the operations of the business. And we are increasing costs and demanding a different type of leadership style that some CEOs are eating up. They are loving it because that's what they've really wanted to move the organization towards, is how do we really optimize? How do we really make things better? Yes. How do we actually get these fresh ideas? And so there is a small percentage of CEOs that are loving this, but it is the overwhelming majority who absolutely hate this, and it is, for some strange reason, everything is directed straight at what they call the San Francisco mentality or the Silicon Valley mentality, and those tech workers and those millennials. I mean, it's like all labels. And if you ask people what those actually mean, they're like, well, and they don't. No, it's just, we got 4 boogeyman and 4, straw men and everything else.
Auntie, let's hear from you, man. Unless that was a accidental hand raise. All right. I'm just going to assume that was a accidental hand raise, Auntie. Any other questions or comments? Rashad says he hates the word resource. Why is that?
It sounds so dehumanizing. 'Cause in my organization and most places I've been, the vast majority of times they're talking about getting people to do something, they use the word resource. And I always hated that usage of it. I figure resources are technologies, processes, but I don't like referring to people as resources. Like, oh, we need more resources. And also I'm a fan of squad-based sort of organizing where you have cross-functional teams that face customers or clients or whatever, and they sort of develop a relationship together. So instead of giving people or resources or 10% of X and 20% of Y on the project, it's much better, I think, to have squads, otherwise you get a lot of information loss. So I feel like not only is resource dehumanizing, but I also think it encourages a sort of, we need X skill, so let's get X person. And then what happens is that it's hard to establish ownership in larger organizations around certain types of deliverables, certain processes, something that we're dealing with now. So we're trying to fix that, my bosses, but yeah, it's multiple reasons.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Please do let me know. Otherwise, we can start to wind it down. If you guys have not already, be sure to check out it's on YouTube right now and it's on my LinkedIn. Did a interview with a couple of folks from Tonic AI. They're the fake data company that will be released at some point in the future on the actual podcast. The plan now is just to create, again, a backlog of podcast episodes and then release those kind of, how I did on a weekly cadence. I've had a lot of people I've had to catch up with, had a ton of interviews scheduled prior to the office being flooded that I had to cancel. So there's a lot to record. So I'll be busy. I might do something where I just continue the happy hours for the next. I guess I'll just continue happy hours until the end of the year, build up a stack of episodes, and then kind of release them all starting in January, just to give myself a buffer again. But yeah, if you're interested in coming on the podcast, send me a message, let me know. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, let me know. The episode I did with Tonic AI was a sponsored episode. So if you liked that, and if you're a founder, or if you're just trying to spread the word about your product, hit me up. I'm happy to have you on the podcast, and we'll chat about what you got. But yeah, if you know people who are cool, who might want to come on the podcast, let me know. I should just announce now that there's going to be another podcast coming up, one specifically focused on deep learning, and that'll be at some point later this year. That'll be a podcast that's done through my work at Deci AI. So the Arts of Data Science will still remain what it is. It's not really like a technical podcast. Like if you guys want a day in the life of a data scientist, you can always tune into Daliana's podcast or John Crone's podcast. Mine's always kind of a little bit different. But the deep learning podcast, I'm extremely excited about launching that. So definitely keep an eye out for that in the near future. All right, y'all. Does not look like there's any other questions or comments. I think I did a good job killing time until then. Thank you all for being here. Feels good to be back in the office. I'll give you guys a quick tour of what it looks like around here. There's a couple other things I got to get on the list. I got to get another proper camera and all that. But here's a quick tour of the office. That's where I sit down. That's my little office. That's not my little couch. It's my lights. And that's it. That is pretty much it, man. So thank you all for being here. If you're listening on the podcast and wondering what it looks like, then go to YouTube and check that out. Y'all take care. Have a good weekend. I'll see you around. Remember, my friends, you got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? Cheers, everyone.